do you believe is the solution to the city employee pension problem? And what steps would you take in the city council position to work toward that solution?
Well, certainly encouraging our next mayor to get down at the table, roll up the sleeves, and come to a resolution with the representatives of our city employee unions. I have discussed this very issue with for example, the FOP. I have point blank told them that we need to solve this without raising taxes. That's not an option. I have canvassed over 4,000 houses within my district since last July. And I have personally knocked on and had over 600 discussions with people, and it's either number one or number two on everybody's best discussion list as far as our pensions. And I expressed that to the FOP. And as I put it, unless we're planning on having public safety enemy number one in the eyes of our citizens in their city, we need to sit down at the table and, like professionals, solve the problem. The pension was developed back 20 plus years ago. Times change. What could not be envisioned then, that's envisioned now, has changed. It's very difficult to have an agreement that lasts forever. And but we have to understand, the citizens of this county have voiced very loudly that the answer is not in raising taxes to satisfy some of these unforeseen areas. There are things that doesn't make sense, and with reasonable people. And I consider myself a very common sense oriented, very reasonable person. So if it doesn't make sense to me, I think I always feel and justify that by conversations that I have that I'm usually not outside the norm. And so as a city council member, I'm letting my voice be point blank known. This is going to be solved, or we will solve it for them through my vote on the city council. And that's coming in and looking at having a reasonable retirement program. We all want good retirement programs. I have a 401k, and I'm sure many of you guys have a 401k here. And part of the solution for part of our city employees might be moving them over to a private funded retirement plan. And for our fire department, city employee and officers, if we're going to live on the current pension program, then it needs to be fair to both the taxpayer and them as employees. And I don't think that there's equality there, and we need to solve that, because number one, it's not doing our public safety personnel any good, because it affects morale.
Two-part question for you.
Okay.
What is your general view on the granting of sole source contracts for goods and services needed by the city?
On sole
source contracts.
What do you mean by that? Can you
There's
clarify
only
that?
one person they go to.
In my company, I'm kind of that go-to person, and it makes me a very savvy purchaser of goods and services. And that's one of the areas that, as I've been knocking on doors, that I've come across in one or more city employees that I've knocked on their doors, and they've talked about how ridiculous it is to have to go out and buy a computer that on their price list is about $6,000. But if you and I went to Best Buy tomorrow, we could probably get one at twice the speed and twice the capacity for $600. Once again, I go back to reasonable. I go back to common sense. We need to change how we're purchasing, if indeed we have situations that exist as I just described.
Is there a specific dollar amount above which any contract should start the bidding process, should be bid upon?
The answer to that, yes. We did that in my homeowner association. Over a certain amount of dollar value, that it automatically gets bid.
What's that dollar amount
You
here?
know, you talking about for the city?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that dollar amount. I'm not gonna try to place come up with that dollar amount. But it's more than a dollar, and it's less than a billion, right? It's somewhere between. No, but it's a reasonable but there definitely should be a threshold.
Thank you.
Oh, for sure.
Are there any fees that have been put in place by the current government you would attempt to reduce or remove, and how would you cover any revenue shortfall as a result?
Yes, sir.
Good.
And they would be certainly two of the fees of the three that were put in place, the stormwater and the garbage fee. And I would replace, and as soon as our economy comes back to life and we start having newfound revenue in our budget, that would be the first thing that I would encourage my city council comrades to move back into the operating budget of our city. At least it would be tax deductible. Placed back into the millage rate where it is. Let's let the millage. The millage rate should be set based on our needs. And everything else the fees are just tax increases that are outside of that village, and doesn't kid anybody.
What would you do to encourage transparency, public access to government, and public participation in the legislative process if you get elected?
Holding town meetings, I think, as I've demonstrated in my campaign of going door to door, and people ask me how that is, and I said, surprisingly, when I first started out as a business guy who's never run for public office, I was pretty nervous about it, just cold calling, so to speak. But I said, that's actually been the most fun part of my campaign. Even beyond sitting here, talking with you guys. Because I've learned a whole lot. I've met a lot of people. I've really had the opportunity to listen to what's on people's mind and get invited into living rooms and meet Betsy and Fred and hear about their lives and how tax increases, how people have lost jobs. If you've let's say you haven't lost your job, and you've never sat down with somebody in the last couple of years who has lost their jobs and had found employment in the last couple of years. It really helps you connect. It really helps you understand, and I think that's very important, especially for my district where we do have two very different groups: the beaches and then what we call the West Beaches on the south side. Being connected with constituents, holding as many public functions as possible, so so you can continue to reap that conversation with the people in your district. You know, through certainly understanding the sunshine laws and abiding by them is very important. I've always maintained a very high ethics, high morals. When somebody asks me something, they know they're going to get a straight answer, and or at least if I don't know the answer, they know that I know how to get it and will help them get it. So, doing all those types of things will help me connect with the people in my district and connect with people in Jacksonville and maintain that very good relationship.
Right. Take us out of here, Victor.
What distinguishes you from your opponents and specifically makes you, and not them, the right choice for the voters in your contest, which is particularly competitive?
Right. In my business, I make a living by being the most objective, unbiased, and most educated in terms of the issue person in the room. And I've carried that to the campaign. I'm not going to have the endorsement. I'm not part of the establishment, as I've been told, as a newcomer into the political circuit, which I like. I don't want to be part of the establishment. I want to be a business owner. I want to be a business owner that knows a great deal and has been very involved in the community in a lot of different ways, so can take that experience for all those things that I've developed my knowledge on: growth management, transportation, education. I've got a great education background in serving the SACs and being part of the new high school's boundary steering committee. So, there with drawing lines and doing the analysis and so forth. I've had those experiences, and no one in my race has done anything close to this, except for being, a public official 20 years ago. And it's those things that I think you'll see when I'm sitting in the council that you'll be able to say he's beholden to no one, and we can count on him to living up to the message that he preached, or that he verbalized in running for this position. And as I may not have all the answers, as this is my first involvement with our city government at this level, but I do know how to get those answers. I do know how to surround myself with the right people, get a wealth of knowledge. And the thing that I've always prided myself on is, at the end of the day, being able to make a decision and not just standing at the cliff scared to do that. So,
All right. Assuming that concerned taxpayers of Duval County were to officially endorse you, what actions, if any, would you take to inform the electorate of that fact?
I certainly would make it part of my campaign material. I certainly would. I mean, of all of the endorsement interviews that I've done, I think you guys certainly represent the thoughts more along the line with the citizens of Duval County, and what you stand for in terms of making sure that we're not raising taxes every year, that we're trying to live within our current revenue, that if we don't have the revenue, then we don't spend the money, that we have to find things to cut. And so therefore, I guess I certainly value you guys about as much as I could value an organization here in Duval County, in representing those values that I feel like I'm trying to demonstrate.
There is one